"No, it still hurts there," the young Apache woman said. "The rancher did it, and he had a wife." The young Apache woman woke early, as she always did, before the sun had fully risen over the horizon. The sky was painted in soft shades of pink and orange, and the air was cool and crisp, carrying the faint smell of the desert and the distant mountains. She liked these quiet mornings, when the world seemed calm and still, and she could think about her family and her small, tight-knit community. Her home was simple, a small house near the edge of the reservation, with a garden her mother tended and chickens that wandered freely in the yard. Life was not always easy, but it had a rhythm, a pattern that she had grown up with, and she felt safe here. She stepped outside and took a deep breath, feeling the warmth of the early sun on her face. The land was familiar to her, every tree, every rock, every path. She had played among these hills as a child, running with her cousins, climbing rocks, and listening to the elders tell stories of their ancestors. Those stories were important to her, not just for their lessons but because they reminded her of who she was and where she came from. Her people had survived so much over the years, and the strength of her family and community was something she carried in her heart every day. Her mother was already awake, tending to the garden and humming softly. The young woman joined her, helping water the plants and checking the vegetables for ripeness. They worked in silence at first, the only sounds being the rustling of leaves and the distant call of a bird. Then her mother spoke, reminding her to help her younger brother with his homework after breakfast. There was comfort in the routine, in the predictable patterns of life that made even small chores feel meaningful. After finishing in the garden, she went inside to prepare breakfast. She made simple meals, eggs, bread, and sometimes beans, but always with care. Eating together was a small but important ritual in her family, a time to share news, laugh quietly, and support each other. Her father had left early for work, like he did every day, tending to the land and helping the few ranchers who still came to the reservation. Her older brother had already gone to school, and her younger brother was still getting ready, fumbling with his backpack and trying to find his shoes. She smiled at him, ruffling his hair, and reminded him to eat before leaving. After breakfast, she stepped outside again, enjoying the warmth of the sun that was climbing higher in the sky. She walked along the path that led from her home to the small schoolhouse in the heart of the community. Along the way, she greeted neighbors and friends, nodding or waving as they worked in their yards or tended to their chores. Everyone knew each other here, and the sense of familiarity brought a quiet sense of security. Even when challenges arose, there was a shared understanding and care that made the community feel like an extended family. School was a place she looked forward to, not just for learning but for connection. She had a few close friends who made her laugh and helped her through the stress of lessons and homework. Her teachers were kind and patient, recognizing the strength and resilience that many of the students brought with them each day. She loved reading and writing, often staying late after class to finish a story or journal about her thoughts and dreams. Education was important to her family, and she felt proud knowing that every lesson she learned was a step toward her own future, a way to carry her community forward. After school, she often wandered near the edge of the reservation, where the land stretched out toward the ranches and open plains. She liked to observe the animals, the birds flying overhead, and the quiet beauty of the desert. Sometimes, she would sit for hours under a tree, sketching what she saw in her notebook or writing about her thoughts and dreams. The world beyond the reservation felt distant, almost unreal, but she was curious. She wondered what it would be like to travel, to see other places, and to meet people with stories different from her own. Yet she always returned to the reservation, to the safety of her family and the familiarity of the land that had shaped her. Her evenings were spent helping with household chores, preparing dinner, or simply sitting with her family as they shared stories from their day. The elders often spoke of the past, how their ancestors had lived, the hardships they had overcome, and the traditions they had preserved. Listening to these stories made her feel proud of her heritage. She understood that being Apache meant more than just living on a land. It meant carrying forward the lessons of courage, resilience, and community that had been passed down for generations. Evenings were quiet, with the sky turning shades of purple and deep blue. She would often sit outside on the porch, watching the stars appear one by one. The vast sky made her feel small, yet connected to something much larger. She thought about the future, about the possibilities waiting for her beyond the mountains. She imagined herself helping her community, sharing knowledge, or creating stories that others could learn from. Dreams filled her heart, bringing a sense of hope that carried her through each day. Life on the reservation was not without its difficulties. Resources were limited, and there were times when her family struggled to make ends meet. Sometimes the young woman witnessed the sadness or frustration in the eyes of neighbors facing similar challenges. But even in the hardest moments, there was a resilience that could not be broken. The people around her cared deeply for one another, offering support, advice, and comfort whenever it was needed. She learned from an early age that strength was not just about surviving, but about helping others survive as well. On some days, she would visit the elders who lived near the center of the community. They welcomed her warmly, sharing stories, wisdom, and sometimes gentle advice. She loved listening to their experiences, learning how they had faced challenges and found ways to persevere. Each story she heard added depth to her understanding of life, teaching her patience, compassion, and the importance of standing up for what was right. The elders' presence reminded her that she was part of a larger story, one that stretched back for generations and would continue long after her own life. As the sun set and the first stars began to twinkle, she returned home, tired but content. She felt a deep sense of belonging, knowing that she was part of a community that valued tradition, family, and resilience. Though the world beyond the reservation sometimes seemed uncertain and distant, here she was, safe, nurtured, and surrounded by people who loved her. The young Apache woman often reflected on her life at this point, understanding that while challenges existed, her roots were strong. She carried the lessons of her ancestors in her heart, the love of her family in her mind, and the hope of a bright future in her spirit. Each day she moved forward with quiet courage, ready to face whatever came next, drawing strength from the land, her people, and the stories that shaped her. After school, the young Apache woman often took a longer walk than usual, wandering near the edge of the reservation where the land began to open up toward the ranches. She liked the feeling of space around her, the endless sky above, the soft whisper of the wind, and the quiet rustle of leaves and grass. These walks gave her time to think and reflect, to imagine what her future might look like, and to feel connected to the land she had grown up on. The ranches were not far, and she sometimes saw workers in the distance, tending to animals or fixing fences. One afternoon, as the sun began to dip low in the sky, she noticed a man she had seen before, a rancher who lived nearby. He was tall and carried himself with an air of confidence. She had spoken to him politely before, exchanging greetings when their paths crossed, but she did not know him very well. On this particular day, he waved at her from a distance and called out her name. She hesitated for a moment but then walked closer, curious and wanting to be polite. "Hello," he said with a smile. "I see you often walking this path. It's a nice place, isn't it?" She nodded, smiling cautiously.
Yes, it's peaceful. I like walking here.
They talked briefly about the land, the animals, and the weather. At first, the conversation felt harmless, even friendly. He seemed interested in her thoughts and her observations about nature. She felt flattered that someone older and seemingly confident was paying attention to her ideas and listening to what she had to say. It was not often that adults really seemed to hear her, and the conversation gave her a sense of connection, even if it was just a small one. Over the next few days, he continued to speak to her whenever he saw her. Sometimes he offered small gifts, like a basket of fresh vegetables or fruit, which he said he had brought from his farm. She accepted them politely, thinking of sharing them with her family. At first, she did not feel uncomfortable. He seemed kind and generous, and she had been raised to show respect to adults in her community. But slowly a small unease began to grow in her mind. She noticed that his compliments were often personal, focusing more on her appearance than her ideas or thoughts. His words made her feel unsure, and she realized that what had seemed friendly at first was starting to feel different. One afternoon, he asked if she would help him with a small task on his ranch, a simple chore like feeding chickens or checking on the animals. She hesitated, thinking about the distance from the reservation and the uncertainty of being alone with him. But she did not want to be rude and decided to go, telling herself it would be quick and harmless. When she arrived, the task seemed ordinary at first, just as he had described. She fed the animals, checked the pens, and did exactly what she had been asked. The rancher watched her, occasionally speaking to guide her through the chores, and she tried to focus on the work and ignore the nervous feeling in her chest. After the work was done, he offered her a drink and some snacks. She accepted politely, thinking of manners and not wanting to offend him. As they sat together, he spoke more personally, asking questions about her family, her dreams, and her life on the reservation. At first it felt like genuine interest, but she began to notice the way he looked at her, the tone in his voice, and the way he tried to make her feel special. It was confusing because she did not know how to respond. She had been raised to respect adults and be polite, but she also felt unsure about his intentions. Later that week, he began inviting her more frequently to help him around the ranch. Sometimes it was small chores, sometimes just conversations over tea. She felt torn. She enjoyed the moments of attention, the chance to talk to someone outside her family, and the small sense of being noticed, but she also felt the pressure of trying to understand his intentions and protect herself. Her thoughts became occupied with worry and doubt. She remembered her parents' warnings about being careful with strangers, but he was someone familiar now, someone who seemed helpful and kind. She felt confused and anxious, not wanting to disappoint him, but also wanting to keep her own safety in mind. One day, during one of these visits, he spoke in a way that made her particularly uncomfortable. His words suggested that she should keep their meetings a secret, that no one needed to know about what they were doing together. She felt a knot in her stomach. Keeping secrets from her family and community went against everything she had been taught. She remembered the importance of honesty, the lessons from elders about speaking the truth, and the strength that came from being open and aware. She decided then that she would be cautious, careful not to trust too quickly, and always stay aware of her surroundings. She began to notice subtle patterns in his behavior, moments when he would act overly familiar or suggestive, or times when he expected more attention than she was willing to give. Each interaction left her feeling anxious, confused, and unsure. She realized that what had started as friendly gestures and conversations was becoming complicated, and that she needed to think carefully about how to handle the situation. Her mind was filled with questions. How could she maintain politeness while protecting herself? How could she navigate this without causing conflict or danger? And most importantly, how could she stay true to her own sense of safety and comfort? During this period, she turned more often to her friends and family for support, but carefully because she did not want to worry them unnecessarily. She found solace in small moments, talking to a friend about her day, writing in her notebook about her thoughts and feelings, or spending quiet time with her mother in the garden. These moments reminded her of the strength she carried within her and the values she had been taught. She learned to listen to her own intuition, to recognize discomfort, and to act in ways that prioritized her well-being. Despite the confusion and anxiety, she also discovered resilience. She found ways to assert boundaries without confrontation, to leave situations where she felt uneasy, and to remain calm in difficult moments. Each day, she grew more aware of her ability to protect herself, to make careful decisions, and to navigate complex social situations. She realized that courage was not only about standing up to obvious threats, but also about maintaining control over her own life and choices, even in subtle or complicated circumstances. Her family noticed subtle changes in her demeanor, moments of quiet reflection, occasional hesitation, and increased thoughtfulness. But they did not fully understand the reasons. She did not speak openly about the rancher yet, choosing instead to observe and reflect, to gather her own understanding before taking any action. She remembered the lessons of the elders. Strength often came from patience, awareness, and thoughtful decision-making. These lessons guided her as she carefully managed her interactions, always keeping her own safety and dignity in mind. By the end of that week, she had learned important lessons about trust, attention, and personal boundaries. She understood that appearances could be misleading, that kindness and attention were not always what they seemed, and that her own instincts were a powerful guide. She began to see the importance of speaking carefully, of protecting her privacy, and of seeking support from trusted sources when needed. Even as she navigated this complicated situation, she continued to find joy in everyday life. She laughed with her friends, helped her family, and enjoyed quiet moments in the desert or the garden. She found beauty in the small details, the sound of wind through the trees, the warmth of sunlight on her face, the rhythm of daily chores, and the stories shared by the elders. These moments reminded her that life was full of both challenges and joys, and that she had the strength to handle both with care and awareness. By the time the sun began to set again, painting the sky with shades of gold and purple, she felt a mix of emotions: uncertainty, caution, and growing awareness, but also a quiet confidence in her own ability to navigate the world around her. She understood that life would sometimes present difficult or confusing situations, but that with patience, thoughtfulness, and the support of her community, she could make wise decisions and maintain her safety and dignity. She walked home slowly, reflecting on the week's events, thinking about her family, her friends, and the values she held dear. The lessons she learned were not easy, but they were important. She had begun to understand the complexity of human behavior, the need for careful judgment, and the importance of trusting herself. As the stars appeared one by one in the deepening sky, she felt a quiet sense of resolve, ready to face the days ahead with awareness, patience, and courage. The days following her visits to the ranch were filled with a mix of emotions for the young Apache woman. Each morning she woke with the hope of routine, yet a quiet tension lingered in her chest. She felt unsure of how to handle the situation with the rancher. On one hand, he had been kind at first and seemed genuinely interested in her thoughts. On the other hand, she noticed subtle behaviors that made her feel uneasy. These thoughts weighed heavily on her mind, and she found herself replaying each encounter, trying to understand what was appropriate, safe, and respectful. She started to pay closer attention to her feelings, learning to notice the small warnings her mind and body gave her. When he smiled in a certain way or asked her to stay longer than necessary, she felt a tightness in her chest, a signal she could not ignore. She had been raised to listen carefully, not only to words but to the deeper meaning behind them. Her elders often said that intuition was a gift, a quiet voice that could guide one through uncertain times. She realized that now she needed that voice more than ever, to navigate a situation that was confusing and uncomfortable. Despite her caution, she struggled with the idea of speaking openly about her worries. She feared that her family or friends might misunderstand her or overreact. She worried that sharing her feelings could create tension in the community, and she did not want to bring shame or trouble to her loved ones. This internal conflict made her anxious, but it also strengthened her resolve to observe and think carefully before taking any action. She reminded herself that patience was part of wisdom, and careful observation could provide the clarity she needed. At school, she tried to focus on her studies, though her mind often wandered. Writing in her notebook became a refuge. She wrote about her thoughts, her observations, and her feelings, creating a private space where she could process everything without judgment. The act of putting words on paper helped her understand the complexity of the situation. She recognized that while the rancher's attention could feel flattering, it was not always safe to trust appearances. Writing allowed her to explore her feelings of confusion, discomfort, and even guilt, without fear of being judged. She also confided quietly in a close friend, someone who had always been supportive and trustworthy. Together, they discussed the importance of boundaries and self-respect. Her friend listened without interrupting, offering gentle advice and reassurance. This support reminded her that she did not have to face difficult situations alone. Even though she still felt nervous about her encounters with the rancher, she felt slightly lighter, knowing that someone understood her perspective. The small comfort of having an ally strengthened her resolve and reminded her of the value of community. At home, she observed her family carefully. Her mother noticed that she seemed quieter, more thoughtful, and occasionally distracted. Her younger brother sought her attention with playful teasing, but she often responded with a distracted smile lost in her thoughts. Her father asked her questions about school, her friends, and her daily routine, and she answered politely, keeping her worries to herself. She knew that her family loved her deeply and wanted to protect her, and part of her struggle was deciding how much to reveal without worrying them unnecessarily. During this time, she reflected on the lessons her elders had taught her about strength, courage, and the importance of maintaining personal boundaries. She remembered stories of women who had faced difficult situations, who had navigated challenges with patience and wisdom. These stories inspired her. She realized that being strong did not always mean speaking loudly or confronting problems directly. Sometimes, strength was about careful thought, careful observation, and the courage to act at the right moment. She also began to notice the power of small actions. By choosing to leave a situation that made her uncomfortable or to assert her preferences politely, she recognized her ability to maintain control over her own life. She practiced saying no in her mind, imagining different scenarios and preparing herself for moments when she needed to act. Each thought, each mental exercise gave her confidence. She began to understand that while she could not control the behavior of others, she could control her responses and protect herself with awareness and care. Her walks near the ranch continued, but now with a different perspective. She observed the landscape carefully, noting paths, exits, and safe areas. She paid attention to who was around, how the rancher interacted with others, and how she felt during each encounter. These observations were not meant to create fear, but to increase her awareness and ensure her safety. She realized that being careful did not mean being afraid. It meant being wise and thoughtful, learning from each experience and taking deliberate steps to protect her well-being. At the same time, she continued to find moments of joy and normalcy. She laughed with her friends, helped her family with chores, and spent quiet moments observing the beauty of the desert. She found comfort in the rhythm of daily life, the sun rising and setting, the sounds of animals, the gentle movements of the wind. These moments reminded her that even in times of uncertainty, life could still be beautiful and fulfilling. They helped her stay grounded and connected to the world around her, giving her strength to face challenges with a clear mind. One evening, while sitting with her mother and younger brother, she reflected on the events of the past week. Her mother spoke of the importance of honesty, kindness, and wisdom. Her younger brother shared a story from school, filled with laughter and curiosity. In that quiet moment, the young woman felt a deep sense of gratitude for her family and community. She realized that their love and support were a source of strength, giving her the courage to navigate the complexities she faced. She understood that she was not alone, and that even difficult experiences could be faced with the guidance and care of those who cared for her. The young woman also thought about the future. She imagined herself learning more, growing stronger, and using her experiences to help others in her community. She considered the possibility of becoming a source of guidance, someone who could listen and offer support to those who faced uncertainty or discomfort. This vision gave her hope and a sense of purpose, reminding her that her experiences, while challenging, were part of a larger journey of growth, resilience, and understanding. In the days that followed, she continued to practice awareness and careful judgment. She reminded herself to trust her instincts, to act cautiously, and to maintain clear boundaries. She learned to recognize subtle signals of discomfort, to pause and reflect before responding, and to rely on the support of her family and friends. Each decision, no matter how small, strengthened her sense of self and her confidence in navigating the world around her. The sun rose and set each day, carrying with it moments of learning, reflection, and quiet strength. The young Apache woman moved through her daily life with growing awareness, careful observation, and quiet courage. She faced challenges not with fear, but with patience, wisdom, and the knowledge that she had the tools to protect herself and make thoughtful decisions. She understood that life would continue to present complicated situations, but that she could navigate them with care, resilience, and determination. As she prepared for sleep each night, she reflected on the lessons she had learned. She thought about trust, boundaries, courage, and the power of careful observation. She understood that strength could take many forms and that her ability to remain thoughtful and aware was itself a form of bravery. She felt a growing sense of confidence in her ability to navigate the world, protect herself, and make wise choices, even when faced with uncertainty. The young woman's journey was far from over. But in these quiet days of reflection and careful observation, she discovered important truths about herself. She learned that her intuition was valuable, her voice mattered, and her choices could shape her path. She understood the importance of patience, the power of support from loved ones, and the strength that comes from inner awareness. Each day she grew stronger, wiser, and more prepared to face the challenges that awaited her, knowing that she carried within her the lessons, love, and resilience of her community. The young Apache woman had spent weeks carefully observing her surroundings, thinking about her feelings, and learning to trust her instincts. She had come to understand that while the world could be complicated, she had the strength and wisdom to make careful choices. One morning, as the sun rose over the desert and painted the mountains in shades of gold and pink, she made a decision. She would no longer let uncertainty rule her. She would take deliberate steps to protect herself and reclaim control over her life, even if it meant facing difficult conversations. She began by reaching out to someone she trusted completely, an elder in her community who had always offered guidance and wisdom. The elder was known for listening patiently and helping young people navigate challenges with care.
The young woman approached slowly, her heart beating fast, but her mind clear.
She explained in her own words that she had encountered a situation that made her feel uncomfortable and confused. She spoke carefully, focusing on her feelings rather than assigning blame, so that the elder could understand the experience from her perspective. The elder listened attentively, nodding occasionally, and offered gentle words of encouragement. "It is not wrong to feel unsure," the elder said. "Your feelings are important. Trust them. Your courage is shown not by silence, but by the way you choose to act with care and wisdom." Hearing this reassured her. She realized that seeking guidance was not a sign of weakness, but a demonstration of strength. With the elder's support, she began to understand that she could take steps to protect herself without acting recklessly or hurting others. Next, she carefully planned how to navigate her interactions with the rancher. She reminded herself to always stay in public areas of the community, to avoid being alone when possible, and to communicate clearly and politely if she felt uncomfortable. She practiced saying phrases that respected both her own boundaries and the social expectations she valued. Each mental rehearsal gave her confidence. She understood that preparation was a form of strength, a way to ensure she remained in control even in situations that could feel confusing or pressured. She also confided, in small steps, to her closest friends. She shared her feelings about the rancher and the encounters, emphasizing how they made her feel uncertain and uneasy. Her friends responded with care, offering reassurance, advice, and practical support. They suggested simple strategies, like walking together near the ranch or keeping someone informed whenever she had to go there. This support reminded her that she was not alone, and that her community could help her stay safe while she navigated the situation. One afternoon, she returned to the area near the ranch, this time accompanied by one of her friends. The sun was warm, and the wind carried the scent of wildflowers and dry grass. She noticed the rancher in the distance, but instead of feeling nervous, she felt prepared. She and her friend stayed in view of others, keeping the conversation light and polite, and she was careful to maintain her boundaries. She realized that confidence came not from avoiding challenges, but from facing them with awareness and clear limits. Over the next few days, she continued to assert her independence and awareness in subtle, respectful ways. She focused on her studies, spending extra time at school on writing and reading. Writing became a tool for processing her emotions, understanding her thoughts, and planning her next steps. She created lists of actions, small goals, and strategies for maintaining her boundaries. Each day she felt a little more in control, a little more empowered, and a little more confident in her ability to navigate social interactions safely. Her family noticed the change in her demeanor. She was more thoughtful, attentive, and quietly confident. Her mother commented on the maturity she seemed to display, and her father smiled at her careful planning and consideration of each decision. Even her younger brother noticed, asking her questions about her day and her plans for school projects. These small affirmations reminded her that she had the support of her family, and that they could be a source of strength and guidance, even if they did not fully understand every detail. The young woman also began to reflect on the lessons of courage she had learned from her ancestors. She thought about the women in her family and community who had faced challenges with patience and wisdom, who had navigated difficult situations without losing their dignity. These reflections inspired her to act in ways that were thoughtful, careful, and strong. She realized that courage was not loud or dramatic. It was quiet, consistent, and rooted in self-respect. One afternoon, she decided to share her experiences more openly with the community elder. She described the ways in which she had handled her interactions, the steps she had taken to maintain boundaries, and the emotion she had felt along the way. The elder listened carefully and praised her for her awareness and self-discipline. "You are showing the strength of your ancestors," the elder said. "You are learning to navigate life with care and respect for yourself and others. That is true courage." These words gave her renewed confidence. She felt that she was not just surviving, but growing stronger and wiser with each decision she made. She also recognized the importance of documentation. With the elder's guidance, she began keeping a written record of her interactions with the rancher, noting dates, locations, and feelings. This was not meant to accuse anyone or create conflict, but as a tool for her own clarity and protection. She realized that having a record helped her see patterns and better understand the situation. It also reminded her that she had the right to be aware, cautious, and prepared in her interactions. Over time, she began to feel a sense of empowerment. By taking small, deliberate actions, seeking guidance, asserting boundaries, documenting her experiences, and maintaining connections with supportive friends, she reclaimed a sense of control over her life. She noticed that she was less anxious, more thoughtful, and more confident in her ability to navigate challenging situations. She realized that preparation, awareness, and support were not only protective measures but also a way to strengthen her sense of self. During this period, she also began to think about how she might help others in the future. She imagined becoming someone who could offer guidance and support, someone who could teach others how to recognize discomfort, set boundaries, and seek help when needed. These thoughts gave her a sense of purpose and direction. She understood that her experiences, while difficult, could be transformed into lessons and tools for the benefit of her community. Even as she focused on careful planning and awareness, she continued to find moments of joy. She laughed with her friends, helped her family in small ways, and enjoyed the quiet beauty of the desert. She noticed the way the sunlight hit the rocks, the patterns of clouds in the sky, and the soft chirping of birds in the evening. These moments reminded her that life was not defined by challenges alone, but by the balance of learning, reflection, connection, and appreciation of beauty. One evening, after a long day of study and reflection, she sat with her mother on the porch. The sky was deep blue, filled with stars, and the air was cool and calm. She shared her thoughts about courage, boundaries, and personal strength. Her mother listened and nodded, sharing wisdom about life, resilience, and self-respect. The young woman felt comforted by this conversation. She realized that while challenges might arise, she could face them with patience, careful planning, and the support of her family and community. By the end of the week, she felt a growing sense of readiness. She understood that challenges would continue to appear, but she now had tools to navigate them. Awareness, preparation, documentation, support from trusted people, and the ability to assert her own boundaries. She recognized that true strength was not in avoiding difficulties, but in approaching them with clarity, patience, and courage. As she prepared for sleep each night, she reflected on her growth. She thought about the steps she had taken to reclaim control over her interactions, the lessons she had learned about trust and boundaries, and the courage she had discovered within herself. She felt a quiet pride, knowing that she was becoming stronger, wiser, and more prepared for the future. Each day, she was learning not just to survive, but to thrive, navigating the world with self-respect and awareness. The young Apache woman understood that life would continue to present uncertainties and challenges, but she also knew that she could face them thoughtfully, calmly, and confidently. She had learned to trust her instincts, to seek guidance, and to rely on her inner strength. She had discovered that courage was not about confrontation or bold gestures, but about the quiet, steady decisions that preserve dignity, safety, and self-respect. As she drifted to sleep, she felt a sense of calm. She knew that her journey was ongoing, But she also knew that she had grown stronger and wiser through the process. With each passing day, she felt more confident in her ability to navigate the world, maintain her boundaries, and protect herself. She understood that while challenges were part of life, she had the power to face them with courage, awareness, and the support of her community. The young Apache woman woke early as she often did, with a quiet sense of calm she had not felt before. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a soft golden light across the desert hills. She stepped outside and breathed deeply, feeling the cool morning air and the gentle warmth of the sun on her face. Over the past weeks, she had learned so much about herself, about courage, boundaries, and the importance of listening to her instincts. She felt a sense of quiet strength, a feeling that she could face life's challenges with thoughtfulness and care. As she moved through her morning routine, she reflected on the growth she had experienced. The moments of doubt and anxiety had been difficult, but they had taught her valuable lessons. She realized that challenges were not something to fear, but opportunities to practice patience, awareness, and self-respect. Every decision she had made, whether to seek guidance from elders, confide in friends, or assert boundaries, had strengthened her sense of confidence. She now understood that strength was often quiet and steady, rooted in thoughtful action rather than loud declarations. She went to the garden to help her mother, feeling the familiar rhythm of planting, watering, and tending to the vegetables. The simple work brought her comfort and focus. Her mother noticed her thoughtful expression and smiled, sensing a deeper confidence in her daughter. "You are growing into someone wise and strong," her mother said gently. The young woman smiled, appreciating her mother's words. She knew that her family's support had been essential in guiding her through the past weeks, and she felt grateful for their love and presence. Later in the day, she spent time with her younger brother. They laughed as they worked together, organizing tools and feeding the chickens. His playful questions and curiosity reminded her of the joy in small moments. She realized that life was made up not only of challenges, but also of simple, meaningful experiences that brought connection and happiness. These small joys were just as important as the lessons of courage she had learned, and she felt grateful for the balance they brought to her life. As she walked near the edge of the reservation that afternoon, she thought about the interactions she had experienced with the rancher. She recognized that she had navigated them with awareness, patience, and care. She had maintained her boundaries, sought guidance, and remained in control of her own actions. The unease she had once felt had not disappeared entirely, but it no longer controlled her. Instead, it had been transformed into clarity, self-respect, and a deeper understanding of how to protect herself while maintaining kindness and respect for others. She remembered the advice of the elder she trusted. "Courage is not always about facing fear directly," the elder had said. "Sometimes it is about careful thought, preparation, and knowing your own strength." These words resonated deeply with her. She realized that true courage was not about confrontation or anger, but about maintaining dignity, making wise choices, and taking thoughtful steps to navigate challenges. The lessons she had learned were not abstract. They were practical tools she could carry with her for the rest of her life. That evening, she met with a close friend to talk and reflect. They walked along a familiar path, sharing stories and laughing softly. The young woman spoke about the growth she had experienced, the strategies she had used to maintain her boundaries, and the ways in which she had learned to trust herself. Her friend listened attentively, offering encouragement and celebrating her strength. The conversation reminded her that support and connection were essential components of resilience. She understood that facing challenges alone was difficult, but leaning on trusted friends and community members made the journey manageable and even empowering. Back at home, she spent time writing in her notebook. She recorded her reflections, the lessons she had learned, and the plans she had for the future. Writing allowed her to process her experiences fully and gain clarity on her own emotions. She recognized that journaling was more than a personal outlet. It was a tool for understanding, self-expression, and preparation for life's challenges. She felt proud of the growth she had achieved and the careful, thoughtful approach she had taken in navigating complex situations. As the days passed, she became increasingly aware of the small but important ways her confidence influenced her daily life. She spoke with teachers at school more assertively, expressing her ideas and asking questions without hesitation. She participated more actively in group activities, helping younger students and sharing her insights. She noticed that her friends sought her guidance, valuing her calm and thoughtful perspective. The young woman realized that her experiences had not only strengthened her but had also allowed her to become a source of support and encouragement for others. She also took time to appreciate the beauty of the world around her. She spent quiet mornings observing the sky, listening to the wind in the trees and marveling at the colors of the desert landscape. These moments of reflection reminded her that life was rich and full, even amidst challenges. She felt a sense of peace, knowing that she could find joy, connection, and beauty, even in ordinary moments. Her awareness of the present gave her a sense of grounding, helping her approach each day with clarity, calm, and hope. One evening, she sat with her mother under the starry sky. The cool night air was calm, and the stars shimmered like tiny lanterns above the mountains. They spoke softly about life, values, and the importance of personal strength. Her mother shared stories of their ancestors, emphasizing how their wisdom, courage, and careful decision-making had allowed the community to survive and thrive. Listening to these stories, the young woman felt connected to a legacy of resilience and bravery. She understood that her own journey was part of this larger story, and that she was carrying forward lessons that had been nurtured for generations. The young woman also reflected on the importance of forgiveness and understanding. While she had experienced confusion and discomfort in her interactions, she recognized that people were complex, and that learning to navigate difficult situations required patience, empathy, and clarity. She understood that protecting herself did not require resentment or harsh judgment. It required self-respect, awareness, and the ability to make choices aligned with her values. This understanding brought her a sense of inner peace and balance, helping her approach each day with calmness and confidence. In her final reflections, she thought about the future. She imagined herself continuing her education, learning new skills, and finding ways to contribute to her community. She envisioned becoming a source of support for others, sharing her experiences, and helping people navigate challenges with wisdom and care. These aspirations gave her hope and motivation, reminding her that personal growth was ongoing, and that every experience, even difficult ones, could provide lessons and opportunities. She also recognized the importance of gratitude. She felt thankful for her family, friends, and community, whose support had guided her through the past weeks. She appreciated the elders who offered wisdom, the teachers who encouraged learning, and the friends who listened without judgment. Gratitude became a daily practice, a way to focus on the positive aspects of her life while acknowledging the challenges she had faced. This perspective strengthened her resilience and reminded her that she was not alone in her journey. The young woman realized that her experiences had changed her in subtle but meaningful ways. She had become more thoughtful, aware, and confident. She had learned to trust her instincts, assert her boundaries, and seek guidance when needed. She had discovered that true strength was quiet, steady, and rooted in careful thought, preparation, and connection with others. These lessons would stay with her, guiding her through future challenges and helping her navigate the world with dignity, courage, and wisdom. As she prepared for sleep that night, she reflected on the journey she had taken, from uncertainty and unease to awareness, confidence, and empowerment. She felt a sense of accomplishment, knowing that she had faced challenges thoughtfully and maintained her self-respect. She understood that life would continue to present obstacles, but she now had the tools, support, and inner strength to handle them with care. The lessons she had learned were not just about a single situation. They were lessons for life, about courage, resilience, boundaries, and the importance of trusting herself. The young Apache woman closed her eyes, feeling a sense of peace and quiet pride. She knew that the journey of life was ongoing, full of new experiences, challenges, and opportunities for growth. But she also knew that she could face each day with awareness, patience, and courage. She had learned to balance thoughtfulness with action, to value connection and support, and to carry forward the wisdom of her ancestors. She understood that life was not always easy, but with careful choices and inner strength, it could be meaningful, fulfilling, and beautiful. She drifted into sleep with a sense of hope and purpose, knowing that she had grown stronger, wiser, and more prepared for the future. The lessons of courage, awareness, and self-respect would remain with her forever. She had discovered that true empowerment comes not from avoiding challenges, but from facing them thoughtfully, protecting oneself, and finding strength in connection, community, and personal growth. And as the stars shone quietly above, she dreamed of a life filled with learning, love, and meaningful experiences. A life shaped by the choices she had made, the lessons she had learned, and the quiet strength she carried within her.